My name is Dave Summers. I'm the Executive Director of the Omaha Bar Association. And we're here today to have a town hall about court reporting. There was a request that was made to talk about this. And from our perspective, the Omaha Bar Association, we had heard that there were trouble finding court reporters, and certainly had heard about Judge Martinez's pilot project. And then Judge Retzlaff was at the bench bar, and she talked about how they couldn't find anybody and about the new rules coming down. So we scrambled and put on this town hall. And Stu Dornan, past president of the Omaha Bar Association and current candidate for legislature. If anybody, I mean, he agreed to moderate this to keep everything on the up and up. But really, what we want to have here today is a good conversation, informative conversation about where things stand and towards the future. So we have a lot of court reporters here today. We have a lot of judges and practitioners, and we appreciate you all being here. I did get an hour CLE credit for this, free of charge. So I will email everybody on the list. I didn't ask for ethics this time, though. So you'll get an hour of CLE credit if you want it. And then we'll record this and we'll have it for online viewing for anybody who can attend today. We do have a bunch of people on Zoom, about 35, I believe. And we are going to have Judge Martinez Zoom in and actually talk to us there. She's in Belgium right now, attending a funeral, and it's midnight her time, or around 11 o'clock p.m. her time. But we're going to have her speak as well. So bear with me on some of the technical. I thought I had this all figured out. Of course, it didn't work. So bear with us on that. I'm going to turn it over to Stu. He's got some ground rules, and then he's going to start having the conversation, walking us through where things are right now and what the future looks like. We're going to have people up front here, Stu. Is that right? Okay. You're going to call up the hot seat. All right. And I'm going to try to make sure that we get everybody on Zoom seeing it. So if you're on Zoom and you can't hear anything, use the chat feature. I'll keep on adjusting as we go along. I'm tethering because apparently the internet didn't work. So apologies if it gets a little spotty on Zoom. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Stu.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this.
Sure. Little microphone.
Thank you. We're going to move quickly. We're going to have 15-minute segments. So I'm going to keep it to 15-minute segments. We're going to hear from initially the judges from their eyes, then from practitioners, and then from the court reporters. If during that 15 minutes time runs out, we'll circle back at the end to have further discussion. But I want to keep it moving so that we can get as much in as possible. Okay. So we've been fortunate to have a number of judges who have been willing to serve as panelists here. We have Judge Harmon is in the back there. Judge, could you come forward, please? Judge Stratman. Judge Stevens here.
She just texted me, she's on her way. She's
Okay.
stuck in something, so she's right away.
Okay. So 3 different courts. Judge Stratman is district, Judge Harmon is county, Judge Stevens is juvenile. And I'd like to open it up to them with respect to their views on the issues that are facing us with respect to court reporting and the use of technology as a tool, and what your experiences have been like, and what you think some of the things are that really need to be discussed and drilled down on in a fashion that we can know what they are and then move towards a solution.
Okay, loaded. So I'm in a unique position because I was appointed 9 years ago, and when I was appointed 9 years ago, it was at that time I was told not to hire a stenographer, and I was put in a position to where I had to share some stenos with the 3 newly appointed judges before me. So I would have 3 different court reporters each week. And then the 4th week, we would hire out, usually Thomas and Thomas would come in and fill in. So there's a whole history to that, and I don't want to take up too much time, but what it led to was attorneys complaining that they had to contact multiple stenos in order to get a record to appeal me or whatever they needed. So I kind of took some information that I put together and was able to convince Justice Evigan to allow me to hire a steno. And then at that point, Douglas County was up to full 1 judge, 1 steno, and we were that way for quite some time. What I can tell you is that I've been involved in many committees over the last 9 years. Obviously, stenos, in my opinion, are the #1 best record that you can have. But in my new situation, it was my court reporter left to go take a job in Iowa. And so I was back to a situation that was different from 9 years ago. And that 9 years ago, I had several people who wanted to come work for me as a steno. Now there are not stenos to fill the seats. And by the end of this year, we'll have 5 district courtrooms without stenos. So I started doing research. I've been involved in committees, and I can tell you that digital has been there since I've been on the bench. It's been something that has been supported and looked into, and I think it's inevitable. I think that every jurisdiction that I've spoken to near us, they are a hybrid system that has ERs and stenos, and they do it differently depending on where you're at. And so it's, what I can tell you is I've talked to steno schools around our area, and they say, we know you want stenos, but we're keeping our own. So the ones that we train, we're keeping in our state. So good luck to you. So Nebraska doesn't have a steno school, but we have a need to have an accurate record for every litigant, every attorney that comes in. And so this is something that I've been working on for a long time, and it's morphed into a lot of different things. But the bottom line is, going into the future, if you look at Lincoln was 1 judge to 1 steno shortly before I got appointed. When I was going through my situation, there were 2 Lincoln district court judges that didn't have stenos, and they agreed to try out the digital. So that's kind of where they got started with that. Now Lincoln is down to 1 steno. All the other courtrooms are digital. We've looked at Minneapolis. Minneapolis has 70 sort of district court judges. They only have 2 judges that have 1 steno, 1 judge. So we're talking 68 courtrooms that are supported by, I think it's 19 steno, no, I think it's 10 stenos and 19 ERs. So they have 3 schedulers, and they tell the stenos where to go and they tell the ERs where to go. So there is no longer a 1 judge, 1 steno situation in Minneapolis. They're in Colorado Springs. The stenos are only on criminal cases. Everything else is electronic recording. Even Iowa, Eastern Iowa is predominantly electronic recording. So looking at the combination of, we don't have stenos to fill seats, and technology getting better, and all these other jurisdictions facing the same problem and having to go to a hybrid system, I think we all have to be a part of how this works best for Douglas County, Sarpy County, juvenile court, county court, because it's definitely a situation that is going to affect everybody. And so I don't want to take up too much more time, but so that's kind of been my journey of trying to really support stenos, because I do feel that that is the absolute best record. However, we're in a situation now where we can't ignore it anymore. We have to solve our own problem, and part of solving that problem is to incorporate digital recording into district court and do it in a way that supports stenos. I think every jurisdiction that I've spoken to says, well, Alaska's different, but because they can't get people to be in certain places, so they do a lot of electronic recording. But there are a lot of similar jurisdictions to ours that recognize there are certain cases that they always want to have a stenographer on as opposed to ER. I know Lincoln has some ERs that are really good, and they are able to do their own transcripts. And I know, talking to Judge Colburn, he even had an ER that was able to, in the middle of trial, back up and replay a question. So I think just knowing that that technology is out there, my biggest concern is that when you look at the Liberty system is what the state is using now for digital recording, and that the Liberty system, I'm getting to know it a lot better right now, but it operates in a perfect world. So it has to be a perfect setting, which Lincoln was super smart years ago, and they got their bond issues. So now they have this beautiful courthouse with state-of-the-art technology in all their courtrooms. And so they have a very perfect kind of environment for this to work. Douglas County Courthouse is a hot mess when it comes to technology, Wi-Fi spottiness, all that kind of stuff. So these are just the issues that we have to look into and make sure that the resources are put into understanding digital is inevitable. How is that going to incorporate in with our stenos, and how are we going to make sure that we have the software and the equipment and everything that we need to make sure that every attorney and every litigant is getting an accurate record. I'm done.
Yeah, and I'm gonna hold questions until everybody is done, so we've got one. Judge Harmon, you're in a unique position where you've been on the bench for a long time. That's not, how's that experience?
Well, just by way of background, many of you court reporters know me because the majority of my practice before I came to the bench involved district court matters where I was used to having a stenographer and used to being asked, or used to asking the stenographer to repeat a question or to do those kind of things. I've been on the bench in November, it'll be 10 years. One of the things is, and I've gotten used to the Liberty recording. I know that some of the complaints that I have heard have been when it comes to making a transcript. If the judge is not clear, the transcript is not necessarily clear, and a lot of times it's inaudible. But one of the things that I have learned with using the Liberty recording equipment is, and as Stu has said, it took some time to get used to it. One of the things that I try to do when I am on the bench is be very clear in the questions that I'm asking, hoping that I'll have an audible record that will, in fact, if an appeal comes about, that you do have those facts available and that there is a record made. I'm very anal about making sure everybody identifies themselves, making sure that the names are spelled correctly, making sure that the bailiff who was assigned to do the Liberty recording in all of our courtrooms is trained enough that we get spellings so we have a duplication of what happens. I, as a practitioner, much preferred the stenographer. That was the way I was raised as a trial lawyer, and it was nice having that extra body in the courtroom. But I fully acknowledge that we are facing a lot of difficulties. We are facing difficulties in the county court now, trying to find bailiffs to come in and train to learn the Liberty system. We're now down 4 bailiffs in Douglas County. We're operating very short right now because we don't get the appropriate number of applicants to come in. There's a training process to make sure that those bailiffs are in fact trained. It's difficult sometimes to make sure that everyone in the courtroom, especially the lawyers, sometimes the lawyers who are used to dealing with a stenographer aren't very clear in their questions. They ask questions that are not necessarily relevant. You have to slow them down. You have to make sure that, at least that's what I try to do, and I know that Judge Kine and Judge Hanson agree with me here. We have to control that courtroom to the point where we're making sure that we do have a record, because that's important to us also. Again, I'm used to doing the digital. I know that in some federal courts right now in the state of California, the federal courts there use real-time recording systems. They don't have stenographers at all. I've had some experience in the past with Dragon and some of those devices. I never did find them to be appropriate. It would be nice, and again, I know a lot of times court reporters can do real-time where they can identify information and you can look at the questions. That's not available to the county court, so you really have to listen. You have to be very careful about what you're doing to make sure that you do in fact have a record. And I think that's the most difficult thing about the Liberty recording. Number one, to have the training people that are operating the system correctly, that they are trained and they understand what their obligations are to keep that record, to make sure that we have exhibits. Because unlike a court reporter, most of the Douglas County judges become the recipient, if you will, of any exhibits. We mark the exhibits, we make sure that they're appropriately docketed as far as pages are concerned, and we become the receptacle of those documents, unlike in the district court. It's something that you learn over a period of time. It's something that I don't foresee that we'll have any changes in the near future. The only thing that I can hope is that the technology will continue to improve, and we'll be in a position where that technology, because that's what we're saddled with in the county court, that the technology will improve and that we'll have better recording systems.
Like to ask a question, just raise your hand. And then if you guys can repeat it. Question.
Judge Stratman, could you describe for the audience what you are doing right now in terms of how you're keeping your record, how you hope to keep your record that year or two, whatever that may be?
Sure. So Mr. Astley asked me what I'm doing currently without a steno and what my future plans are. So I actually borrowed what Judge Stevens came up with. And so I hired a provisional court reporter. She has extensive experience in the county attorney's office. So she already has the legal vocabulary down. She's a certified legal assistant. And she actually went to a continuing education class where Midge Haney was there and started talking about how great it is to be a stenographer and what it takes to be one. And so she joined a boot camp that Midge has, and even gave Phyllis her steno machine so she could take it home and practice with it and see if it's something that she wanted to do. And so basically I hired Phyllis as a provisional court reporter. She's almost 50% through with her first level of certification digitally, because digital is quicker. So we're going to be able to get certified ERs quicker than a stenographer, because soon to be Judge Lux actually equated stenography with like playing an instrument. You can't just sit down at a piano and start playing it. You have to learn the chords and the notes and the combinations. And so that takes a significant period of time. And then you have to practice and you have to practice so that your proficiency and your accuracy become better. That doesn't happen overnight. So obviously digital gives us kind of a Band-Aid or a solution that can help us through until Phyllis becomes a stenographer. So she has a promise to me in her employment agreement that says that she'll get her CER, which is the equivalent of I think it's the RPR for stenos. So it's what's the first one? So court reporter 1 is a steno that has certain certifications and an ER that has the CER certification. The next level is a steno that has the ability to do real time, and an ER, they have the ability to do their own transcripts. So my anticipation is that Phyllis will be at that second level as an ER, not a steno, obviously. She'll be able to get that accomplished within a year. So my goal was in my courtroom to make sure that I am self-sufficient and have the ability to help out other judges, especially the ones that don't have stenos, so that the stenos can be available for the jury trials, motions to suppress, things that we absolutely have to make sure there's an accurate record, as opposed to, and not that they're not important, but a name change or a default divorce or something like that, that very rarely generates a transcript. So that was my solution to my own problem, that because again, we're going to be 5 stenos short in Douglas County by the end of the year. So the stenos that we have right now they're just working their butts off and they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. So we have to figure out something that's going to make sense so that they're not under so much stress and that we are able to keep having cases heard. Judge Engelman has been 4 months without a steno applying. And so we have to fix this problem so that we don't shut down courtrooms or continue cases, but we also have to be cognizant that we have to take care of our stenos and make sure that they're getting compensated and make sure that they have the support that they need.
So thank you very much. And we want to go to the eyes of the practitioners. We have interim city attorney Matt Kuhse, Tom Reilly, public defender, and then Brenda Beadle, who's first assistant. if you folks would come on up and kind of give us your perception of this from your eyes as far as the importance of the record. And Tom, age before beauty, if you will. Here you go.
I got a million of them.
I feel like it.
Okay, I don't have a heck of a lot of experience outside of Douglas County. So I'm gonna have to keep my remarks germane to Douglas County. Obviously, what's important to us is an accurate record because the appeals that are generated from our office are in many cases serious felonies that end up in the Court of Appeals or in the Supreme Court. And as we all know, the appellant is responsible for the record. So if there's things that are inaccurate or messed up or missing, it's on us. And that gives me great pause to rely on electronics or technology or whatever as a substitute for court reporters. Stu's right. I am pretty old. Believe it or not, when I started in 1975, Judge Burke had a court reporter that still did it with shorthand. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name, but that comes with that. There you go.
He's just as old.
So, I've seen the evolution, so to speak. And, I'm someone that will have to say that change always isn't, I don't want to get on my soapbox too much. Hearing Judge Harmon talking about bailiffs and talking about the exodus of court reporters. Well, one of the reasons is PAY. And I think, cheaper isn't necessarily better in this context. As I said, I can think of any number of instances where I'm so glad that there was a court reporter that was involved, a human being, steno, that knows what they're doing, and can keep track of the record, both with regard to the evidence, the physical evidence rather, and the testimony. I mean, Dina can, we had a really long trial a couple of years ago. It was a 6-weeker, really complex. And the state put on a witness and testified, and I wanted to impeach the witness. And the state objected that I didn't ask proper questions to do impeachment. And the judge initially granted the state motion. And thanks to Dina, we went back and got the record and showed that, in fact, I did ask the right questions, and the judge reversed himself, and I was allowed to ask questions. And at least on that part of the case, it ended up with an acquittal that may not have happened had there not been a court reporter in there who could go to the portion of the questions that were germane. I have no experience with some of these electronic things that Judge Stratman was talking about. To me, liberty means getting my client out of jail. So I can't speak to that. However, I can say, and I think any of the both county and district court judges who are here can attest to the fact that way too often transcripts from the county court that are either misdemeanor appeals or plea and abatement are less than satisfactory. There's way too many inaudibles, way too many, you don't know who the hell is answering, making the statements. And once again, that inures usually to the detriment of our clients. So, as far as I'm concerned, we should do everything we can to keep live steno court reporters in the courtroom as often as we can, and whatever changes we need to do, keep them here, whether that means finding ways to get Metro Tech to create a course, or, give better pay, folks, so we're not losing into other states or other jurisdictions. That would be helpful. I mean, I spoke, obviously, prior to this, I spoke to several court reporters who are much more knowledgeable about this stuff than I am, but Gretchen Thomas told me yesterday that a decade or so ago, that Iowa did away with stenos, and it turned into a you-know-what show, and now they're scrambling to get them back. So, lesson learned, I would like to think that we don't go down the same path and have 10 years of crap before we have to figure a way to get the court reports back. So I will turn it over to Brenda.
Thank you, Tom.
So I actually will just, I don't have anything different really to say than Tom, because we're kind of in the same boat, other than we have the burden of proof. So it becomes a much bigger deal for us if something gets reversed and we have to retry a case and the record is not in place, or something is inaudible, or to the point where I've heard of terrible situations where actual like pieces of it and witness whole statements are not accounted for. And obviously for us, maintaining exhibits, especially in high profile or big murder cases, is of the utmost importance. And we need somebody that is paid more than minimum wage or have less education to understand the complexities and importance of that. And I don't have any experience with how it's done with state-of-the-art equipment as they might have in Lancaster, but that isn't going to happen here anytime soon, given our building. And just even in transcripts that we've had, we have a cold case right now that's 20 some years old, and listening to the audios and trying to make sense out of that, have us try to come up with this is obviously not ideal. So to have, and I think of all the sidebars we've had where you might be talking over me, not the other way around. But the court reporter will say, I can't, one at a time, or slow down, or you're too quiet, and all of that is just, we get ahead of ourselves, or we get in, a little bit passionate, and that could affect a record like that. So again, I just kind of echo what Tom said. I'm of the opinion that especially in criminal cases where somebody's liberty is at stake, it's really important to have the stenos to keep track of all of the exhibits and the parties. Actually, that's really all I have.
Talking stick. What is this?
It's a talking stick. I don't know if anybody's watching.
I'm probably going to say pretty much the same thing that Brenda and Tom did. I think what everybody who's a practitioner wants is a good record. I mean, in county court, I'm not wild. I do not like the recording system in county court. It places too much burden, number one, on the judges to have to get the exhibits, mark the exhibits, keep track of the exhibits, when their attention should be on the evidence and the testimony as well. I had my way, there'd be a court reporter for county court, bench trials and jury trials. I know that's not ever going to happen. That's what will be what I would want. But unless the technology improves, it's going to be a problem, because like Brenda said, I need the court reporter or someone to tell people one at a time, I can't hear you. At least for me, and probably for Brenda and Tom, at the end of any trial, was the first thing that the lawyers do is they go running over the court reporter and make sure that we have all the exhibits, which ones are there, which ones actually go to the jury and which ones don't, things of that nature. And I think that can be problematic. However, I do understand that we have a problem, that there are not enough court reporters and there's not any coming down the road. I think pay obviously helps. Pay would help with anything, whether it's vacancies with court reporters, vacancies in the public defender's office, vacancies in the county attorney's office. Pay helps. But if what Judge Stratman is saying is accurate, that people aren't coming out of court reporter school, I apologize if that's not the right word, there's a problem, and the problem has to be fixed. And the problem cannot be solved by just saying, we're not going to do anything. If there are technological upgrades that can be done, great. If there are better things than the recording systems that are out there right now, great. And I think that they have to be considered. I mean, as long as they're better than what's been used in the past in county court. I mean, the problem in county court is those microphones are so sensitive that they're going to pick up what's getting said at council table, what could be said between a bailiff and a person from the court staff, and who's ever transcribing that, which I think is somebody in Lincoln or people in Lincoln. How are they going to know, like, this is just idle chatter and not testimony or something like that? So it's great that the microphones are that sensitive and pick all that stuff up so that it can be clear. But if there's not a way to discern between what's not important and what is actually important, that is a concern. So I do see both sides of it. Me, I would prefer to have human court reporters all day long. But if that is becoming less and less of an option, other things have to be explored. Otherwise, we have this habit, especially in the criminal justice system, of waiting until the problem becomes terrible where we have to do something. We're not very good at having foresight. I'm guilty of it. Brenda's guilty of it. Sure, Tom, you're not guilty, to use your favorite word of it. Judges are guilty. We're all guilty of it, those of us in the system. So if there's a means where we have to start looking forward, then we have to start looking forward.
And I guess I would add, we've had situations where somebody's ready to do a plea and we can't do a plea because there isn't a court reporter available, which is also unacceptable. I mean, we have COVID backlog, and if we can move cases through. So I also understand that obviously there is a situation that we have in our county right now with availability of court reporters. And I don't know if in the meantime, while we get more people learning that trade, that we have a pool of maybe hierarchy of types of cases like was suggested, so that when there's a plea that's coming or a sentencing or whatnot, we have that ability to keep the wheels moving.
Any questions? Yes.
I would ask Mr. Reilly, when you asked Nina to go back and find that part, did she transcribe that for you?
Actually, it's happened in both ways.
Okay.
Both ways, both going back and finding it and giving it to the judge or having it typed up. I was going to add that frequently when we have pretrial hearings, we ask the court reporters to get those things transcribed for us for trial so we can use it at trial. And I've always been very pleased and satisfied with how they recognize, this trial's coming up in a couple of weeks or whatever. Well, I'll get this thing done for you. And it's also important, if it's a lengthy pretrial hearing, frequently the judge is going to want to see that transcript as well when they're making their decision. And sometimes we ask for it if it's a lengthy hearing, so we can cite to it when we write a trial brief. So, it's done in both ways to answer your question. But in my preferred way is to have it in front of me in writing.
So you're able to get that either immediately or within a timely fashion?
Absolutely.
You don't have to wait for it.
I've been lucky that I get along with all the court reporters. They've been great to me. And I've never had a situation where we've had to move a case down the road because the court reporter couldn't get something done.
I've had a similar experience in the middle of a trial where even just like getting ready for a closing argument and we want to hone in on somebody, it might be a preliminary draft, but if we get the gist of it, we don't want to misstate something. So we get that ahead of time. And so that's been extremely helpful.
Other questions? Thank you very much. So the last part of this trifecta is the court reporters. And Gretchen Thomas is here. We have Stefanie. We have Stefanie, Allison, and Victoria Retzlaff. If all of you would come forward, that'd be great. And Gretchen, I'm going to ask you to start out with respect to the funding of court reporters. the money, the salary, what resources you have?
Actually, that would be better for Stefanie. You know,
Okay.
I haven't been official court reporter for over 10 years now, so I don't think I'm the one to ask about
Okay.
money. But
Stefanie, are you game with that?
Repeat your question.
sorry, you don't have a reporter.
Well, the money, salary, and funding of court reporters.
Well, I think that that's a big issue of why court reporters are leaving. We've had 2 reporters leave for Iowa in the last, 4 or 5 months because they pay significantly better. I think that is an issue.
I agree.
I mean, we are professionals. We're professionally educated. We're professionally trained to do a specialized skill that not everybody is able to obtain. And we should be paid for that. And we are not getting fair raises. We've had years we've been frozen and haven't gotten anything at all. We've had years where my pay increase was $500 for the year, which then resulted in my paycheck going down because my healthcare went up and my pay into my retirement went up, which is fair that it goes into the retirement. And I understand there's changes with insurance premiums, but your paycheck actually goes down when you get a $500 raise. And there's been years that we've gotten that more than one in the last 13 years where that's been our raise for the year. It doesn't keep up with the cost of living, and people have no choice but to go somewhere where they make better money. By doing this, you're taking livable wage jobs and you're turning them into non-livable wage jobs. What are they paying courtroom clerks? What are they paying ERs? Now, my understanding is certified ERs are on the same pay scale we are, but inflation affects everybody, not just court reporters. And that's a big issue with us.
How has technology affected legal years?
I'd love to address that. And because, if that's okay. Sure. When I first started for my job, court reporting in 1977, Omaha had a school, and the school advertised, and their byline, their advertising was, "I love my job. I'm a court reporter." My boss at the time thought that was really funny, and he tacked it on my door, and where it was for years, because I love my job, and I still do. Almost 50 years later, I love my job. And when I started my job, I had a manual machine. I dictated paper notes. I used carbon copy. The big deal was to get an IBM Selectric with a backup tape for, to make a correction. And today I write on a computer aided machine. My machine is amazing. I have a dictionary that does automatic transcription of what I do. And that is the technology of today. And people don't understand. It makes sense. I mean, it even makes sense to me that you should be able to push a button and get a recording and transcribe it. But it is human nature to not speak clearly. It is human nature not to speak up. It is human nature to be excited because you're charged with murder or getting a divorce or, whatever. We're not in the courtroom with people on their best days. We're in the courtroom with people on their worst days. And I love Judge Harmon's effort. I love that you actually try to control a courtroom, but that is so not the reality. It is so not the reality. And so the technology of today, Mr. Reilly said that he and I were dinosaurs. When I talked to him yesterday, I said, "No, Tom, you're a dinosaur. I am technology. What we do is technology." And I love it and I'm proud of it. And, our office, we don't wait for court reporters to drop out of the sky, which is what the court system is doing. They're not going to drop out of the sky. We pursue them. We have relationships with the schools. I just paid moving expenses for the court reporter that I got to move from Des Moines. And I paid her $5,000 to get her to move here from Des Moines. Money works. If you want stenos, put some money in it. And put someone on the job. Get someone on the job. Don't wait for them to fall out of the trees. The other thing I would love to address, because I could go on forever and ever. I love my job. But one thing I don't think anyone else is going to address is COVID-19 has changed court reporting in a way you wouldn't know or have anticipated. People have discovered online schools for court reporting. Judge Stratman talked about how there's no schools locally anymore. There doesn't need to be, but there needs to be patience for this to change what is happening throughout the country. National reports that enrollment in schools is up 38%. 38%, but it takes a couple years for those kids to get out of school. Midge Haney is doing the A to Z program. I've been working with Phyllis. She's excited. She wants to be a court reporter. I'm going to put a little sticky on her door someday. But it will take some time to accomplish that. And I never would have thought going to school online would be acceptable. I'm all for it. It's great. People are doing a great job. Midge Haney, because of her efforts, she has 8 people who are in school, going to school, and they're all from Nebraska, and they want to come here and work. If you are paying them GED wages, they're going to go to Iowa, or hopefully they'll come to work for me. And so go ahead, underpay, because they will come and work for me, because they'll make a good living working for me.
I have something else I want to touch on that technology. If you want to know where the top of the technology is, it is with court reporters. Now, when she said that she has a transcript that it translates for her, let me explain how that works. Every stroke I have on my machine, I have programmed my software to come up a certain way. It's not voice to text. It's not speech recognition software. I have programmed every stroke I do on my machine to come up in English in front of me. When I walk out of that courtroom, I am not transcribing anything. I am editing a transcript that it already exists the minute I walk out of that courtroom. So if you want to know where technology really exists, it's with the court reporters. There's now software, if you want it daily copy, where I can send my feed to another court reporter behind the wall, and she can edit my transcript to get it as perfect as possible and then shoot it back to the attorneys at counsel table almost simultaneously. It happens within a few minutes. That can be done. We have the technology.
How many of you know that when you are watching watching TV and the captioning is coming up underneath, that's a court reporter doing that. That is exactly what she's talking about. That is a court reporter. That is technology. And I'm going to save some time for Tori here. I'm sorry. The one thing I want to emphasize also is your official court reporters exist for one reason and one reason only. We're not there for anything except the appeal record. That's it. We're not there we're there for the appeal record. Why would you want to do anything except do your best to have the best appeal record that you can? And I understand that there's a shortage. I have a shortage. I'm going to arm wrestle you for them. But I want to see you able to hire steno reporters because it's the best record. It is the best appeal record.
Thank you. So I just wanted to touch on a little bit about what's going on in Douglas County. You know, we have 17 judges now. We've got 12 stenographers and 1 courtroom clerk. We've lost 3 stenographers just this year. One has moved to Texas for a higher paying job and a very high page rate. The other 2 have went to Pottawatomie County, and sadly, that has been the trend for many, many years now. You know, there's been talk about court reporter shortage. That's not the problem here in Douglas County. I can tell you that there are 9 active stenographers on the payroll in Iowa that came from Douglas County. 9. And as of today's date, Potawatomi County is hiring 2 more reporters, and we could realistically lose 2 more of our own by January. Pay is the issue. I love my job as a stenographer. And I'm a young professional here in Nebraska. I've got 20 years of service to give to the state if they will respect my work ethic, my passion, and recognize and value us. And I think that this bar deserves a superior record, and this bar deserves stenographers. That is the superior record. Sure.
So pay for stenographers, there's the salary and then there's pay rate for, and that can vary based on how many page stuff you do.
It's
There's some variance at the top.
There's a range in the salary, and there's a flat rate per page. Do you have anything to add to that, Stefanie?
Not on the page rate.
Okay.
I think
Are page rate adequate for the amount of time we have with this?
it certainly hasn't kept up with the cost of inflation. In the 13 years I've been an official court reporter, the page rates have not gone up 1 cent in 13 years. Although I get paid the page rate for producing the record outside of court hours. This happens on the weekends and after 5:00 PM most times. That has not changed in the 13 years I've been here. In fact, my understanding is the last page rate went into effect in 2005. So we haven't adjusted it since then. I just wanted,
I will tell you, freelancers charge considerably more as a page rate than what I'm not saying that they need to be equal, but we charge for a run of the, I'm not sure I should.
I was gonna say, maybe not keep getting that.
Yeah. I will tell you that it is 30% more than, probably at least 30%. Yeah,
50 cents.
yeah. Our original is $3.80. Copies are $1.95, and we are, and that's assuming there isn't any medical, technical, difficult rush. Freelancers charge for all of those.
But I just want to make one thing I didn't get to say. We keep talking about the record. I will tell you right here and now, the reality is that if you do not have a stenographer in that courtroom, you cannot guarantee that that record is accurate. You cannot, period. There's shuffling papers, there's coughs, there's slamming doors, where in the courtroom, I hear that. I have a steno outline that tells me what was said. But when you go back and hear it on audio, you can't hear a thing. That's just the way it is. That is just the way it is. Do you want me to show this?
Yeah.
This right here is a transcript with the courtroom clerk that got sent. Thank you. It got sent to, I believe this was general reporting in Lincoln. Yep, Linda Roman did this. There was 261 untranslates, indecipherable, indiscernibles, and unidentified speakers in this transcript. This is an appeal. This is somebody's life here. And this record is not adequate. You can't make a ruling on this. Look at that.
Sticky notes are.
That's where the sticky notes are. Those are every indiscernible, every untranslated I could find, every single one. That is.
And that's one of you.
This is one appeal. This is somebody's life here. This is a custody battle or something. She's a transcriptionist, is what I understand.
So she prepared that from audio.
She prepared this from audio. This was prepared in Sarpy County. This was recorded in Sarpy County and sent to Lincoln, where Linda Roman is. I don't know. I think it's the same equipment that they have. I think the state equipment is the same. But this is somebody's life. If this was you trying this case and this was your life, would you want to pay your attorney to retry this? This is expensive.
And I would just note too that, and there's talk about a court reporter shortage. That coincides with a transcriptionist shortage. That is across the board. So you can record it and record it and record it. Someone's going to have to transcribe it. There's a shortage of that too. And when general reporting or whoever is doing these transcriptions gets slammed, they're going to jack up their price. So I don't know how cost saving this really is in the long run.
Well, and there's other things that are really interesting to me. Some of these are jury trials. I mean, I can show you more transcripts here that were done by somebody who records it in the courtroom, and it was sent out to a transcriptionist. These are criminal jury trials. And then they have the voir dire picking up the jury. And somebody who wasn't present is saying, this is juror Mrs. Anderson. How do they know that was Mrs. Anderson? They weren't there. They're making an assumption all the way through the record that was Mrs. Anderson talking. They don't know that. They weren't there. They didn't see her speaking, which is a problem. I mean, during COVID, with everybody wearing masks, I've had times where I've had two male attorneys in the courtroom and somebody talks and I'm like, wait, which one was you? Because I can't see your mouth moving and your voices are too similar. We clarify that. We make sure we know what's going on. These are all untranslates and indecipherables and unidentified speakers. This is what you're looking at.
You just have no idea how many days a record can go wrong. You just can't. And it seems like it should be easier. I wish it was easier because there's nothing in Nebraska to keep me from taking a tape recorder, putting it on the table and saying, okay, have at it. Let's take your deposition. I won't do it. You don't do it. It's not the standard.
Well,
Okay, thank you, Panelists, very much. We're going to move on to our next panel.
Your technology's battery is low.
Okay. Okay.
Your phone there, Ross.
May need my phone?
Oh, your chances. Sorry, you're my old boss.
Oh. Okay. All right. So we're going to go on to pilot projects, and that's going to involve Justice Funke, Justice Freudenberg. Judge Martinez, are you here somewhere? She's not. Justice Martinez is court reporter. Is she here somewhere? Judge Martinez is court reporter. If you folks, and Amy Prenda, is Amy here? If you folks would come up and give us your thoughts on pilot projects and the future. Who would like to go first? Justice Funke, you're on the air.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank you for letting us participate today and be part of this discussion. This committee was brought to Judge Freudenberg and I, so we didn't volunteer for it. The history lesson, 1984 was the first discussion I saw from the Supreme Court history books about court reporters. 1991, 1994, 1999, 2011, now 2021. So these are not new issues. And I'll be honest with you, we haven't fixed the problems that we've dealt with for a long time. And it's a challenge. And it's come to the point where it's a crisis. We have always struggled in certain parts of the state to have court reporters. And judges have done things to make that work and accommodated their court reporters to change from stenography to digital or things of that nature so they can help facilitate their transition and keep the record. So that's always been a challenge. But in the last 4 or 5 years, it's struck Lancaster County, and now it's struck Douglas County. So when you say there's a court reporter problem in Winkelman, maybe that doesn't strike the court. When you say there's a court reporter problem in Lincoln and Omaha, that's a real issue. And we have gotten to that point. And there's a lot of factors involved. Just so you understand my background and where I come from, county judge in Sarpy for 6 years. Gretchen trained me, so I was a baby judge at that point. 3 years in district court in Casanova. So I've seen Liberty, I've seen stenography, and now 6 years, almost 6 years on the Supreme Court, starting my 6th. Apologize. So I understand all of these issues fairly well, not as intimately as a court reporter because I got to read the transcript. I didn't have to make it. If I had my druthers, I would say every courtroom should have a stenographic court report. Is that financially feasible?
No. Is that feasible with the shortage that we're experiencing? No. So what do? The record is, people know it. We rely on it. It's the lifeblood of what we do. We can't have a justice system without the record. It's important for the litigants, it's important for the attorneys, it's important for the trial judge, and it's extremely important for me in my job now as an appellate judge. All I do is read the record. I don't get that chance anymore to sit in the courtroom and listen to the people, the witnesses testifying, the arguments made by the attorneys. I don't get to see their emotion. I'm relying on a cold, sterile record. So we appreciate and understand the importance of the record. There is no question. And that's why the title of this group was preserving the court record. That's our concern. Obviously, stenographic court reporting is the gold standard. It's fantastic. So we appreciate the work that you do. I have the picture of my court reporter in my office in Lincoln. So I understand the relationship the court reporters have with judges. They work hand in hand. It's a team atmosphere. They're looking out for each other. I had a court reporter that had about 45 years experience when she retired. And we'd walk out of court and I'd say, well, what do you think of that experience? Or what do you think of that witness? And she was always spot on. She knew she'd seen so much and had so much knowledge. I relied on her greatly. So I appreciate the work that the stenographic court reporters are doing. We're not here to denigrate you. We're not here to say you're not important. We don't appreciate it. Perhaps that was the culture or the feelings that you had in the past, and I apologize for it. That is not how it should be. We're on one team. We're the judicial branch. We're here to have people come and get their cases resolved. They can't resolve it on their own, so they come to the court. And the judge and the court reporter and the appellate court have to work together to make that work. So I just want to start out with that. So I apologize, Stu. I've probably gone over my time. But what we've done now is this court reporter group had district judges, one from Sarpy, one from Lancaster, one from Douglas on this court reporter committee. We had court reporters, we had county judges, district judges, Supreme Court judges. We put together what we thought was some reasonable rule changes to address these concerns. It was never a directive from the court, Supreme Court, to get rid of court reporters. That was never the issue. Nobody ever said to me in a whispered conversation, get rid of court reporters. I'll be honest with you, that's truthful. I wouldn't have taken this responsibility if that were the case. But the task was figure out what we do based on this lack of available court reporters. So we worked on these rules, and we didn't fire all the court reporters. We didn't change the rules so the court reporters were irrelevant. We tried to change the rules so the court reporters' work product was maintained by the court in a safe and secure place, a repository, which we have and is ongoing and being beta tested as we speak. We have changed the rules to allow for ER or digital recording so that when there isn't a stenographic court reporter, we have these other options available. We have found, and those are examples of situations that have not gone well. I don't know. I've not seen them before. I haven't been shared with anybody what those are, so I haven't had a chance to look at them. And we don't want that. As a appellate judge, why would I want that record to look at? It doesn't make my job any easier. I don't want to have to look at it twice, cite it, send it back, retry it, and hear it again. So we are striving not to have those situations. The digital recording systems that we have are good, and they're getting better. We are spending monies in Douglas County, Lancaster County, across the state to upgrade the facilities. So Douglas County courtrooms are beautiful. Love them to death. Sat in some as a judge and as a lawyer, but sometimes they're not very conducive to getting great audio. So we are working the last month or so, coming down and trying to get those pieces of equipment to help do the audio or digital recording of those cases. That's one step that we're doing. Another step that we're doing is we're trying to work on education. We have found that if you rely on a court reporting school, you don't have much control about who they send to you, who they promote to you. We have to do a better job of reaching out to those court reporting schools wherever they may be. I know Des Moines has one now. Butler Community College is doing a little bit of a different program. UNO is starting another program. That's going to be more of digital recording, but we're working with those schools to build those relationships. We are also at this point able to fund the training that's going on for these court reporters or these digital reporters so that they have the ability to get the education they need and better handle the courtroom. What Judge Harmon talked about, I didn't have that in Sarpy for 6 years. I had a stenographic, a digital recorder, and she did a great job. She had a microphone, the headset, she monitored when people couldn't be heard. She'd stop them and say, hey, I can't understand you, you need to start over. She marked all my exhibits. She made sure there was a list. I did that as well as a judge because that's what judges do. But she was responsible for doing all those things. We have to continually train our our digital reporters to be prepared to walk into the court, know what's expected, know what to do when there's a problem, how to troubleshoot. We work with Liberty Recording, and they have now created education fees just for Nebraska digital recorders, so they know the things that they should be doing to perform their job. We're going to continue to work with them as Judge Stratman is doing now. We're going to get them certified to record, and then we're going to get them certified to be transcribers so that they will be able to provide their own records. The pilot project with Judge Martinez, I think, has gone well. A lot because of the person she hired and the effort that she's put into this. And if she were here today, I think she'd tell you that. But it's not perfect, and we have work to do, and we'll continue to do that. I see this as a hybrid system. I see this as, and Judge Stratman talked about it. This is a system in which, when there's a murder trial, we will work very hard to have stenographic court reporters in those cases. And I think that's what we should do. In a high dollar civil jury trial, we want stenographic court reporters. In worst cases, when you have child custody, we want court reporters in there. What are we doing to keep court reporters? Well, we are doing a pay study now, try to figure out where we are. Clearly, we're lower than Iowa. We're higher than Missouri, maybe, and Kansas, but not as high as Minnesota. So we're going to look at it. We've hired a consultant to do that. We will have by the end of this year that pay study. We will go to the legislature. We'll ask for increases on that pay study. So I think there will be improvements on the pay. I can't promise you it'll be Iowa standards. I just can't. I don't know what that pay study will look like. But I'm pretty sure we won't be Thomas and Thomas. Gold standard private pay or private company, they have a little more flexibility on some of the things they can do. So I can't promise you we're going to keep up. We're looking at page rates, and you are correct. Page rates have not been increased since 2005. The legislature, in their wisdom, gave it to the court and said, you're in charge of it now. And for 16 years, it hasn't changed. This committee recommended that we would, on an annual basis, a court reporter group of Amy Prenda, Corey Steele, court reporters. We're going to ask a court reporter from the metro area, Sarpy or Douglas or Lancaster, to be on that group as well. But that group is going to report back on an annual basis saying this is what we think page rates should be. We have a proposed rule right now, or proposed rate, 375. So we're still not quite as good as Thomas and Thomas, but 375 from 325 is a big jump. Now, I know there's some discussion about, well, I know there's some discussion about copies. I don't have the copy right off the top of my head, but it's increased, but there will be some change when we get to an electronic filing system of electronic BOEs. That copy may not be available. Attorneys may have the ability just to go and print off a copy from the electronic system.
Justice, the imaginary red light.
Oh, I got about 20 more minutes.
Muted. All right.
All right, I'm not gonna tell the joke again. All right. Well, when I was asked to join the committee, there was no. You got some feedback from back there. There was no agenda to try to take on the court reporters. If we are pointed to a problem and directed, try to find solutions to address it. At all points in time, we try to be inclusive of everyone's views and have them come in. And as we sent out requests for responses, we tried to be responsive to those. And if you saw the drafts as they went through and the drafts, the rules they went through, they changed. And I want everyone to know that that's not an end of the process here. That's why the rule was changed for the page rate, so that could be reviewed on a yearly basis to avoid the haven't done this for 13 years. So this isn't the end of the process. This is, it's another step. But there has to be steps taken in which to try to address the issues that we're facing. So the court's record can be maintained. So justice can continue to get done. And like Justice Funke pointed out, no one wants to see those records that you're pointing out that way. We want, what's that?
So that we're all clear, this is from.
You want, go ahead. Say it out loud so they can hear.
The box at my feet is from the pilot project.
Right.
And if I just may.
You can just talk.
So that we're clear, we didn't cherry pick. We went to the clerk of the district court and we said, we want everything in your possession. Now, some of those are down in Lincoln with the clerk of the district or the clerk of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, but we didn't cherry pick. That box is this point in the pipeline for every appeal off of that recording system.
Why don't you say who you are?
And I'm sorry, for those of you who, for the few of you on Zoom who have never heard, I'm Adam Astley and I represent 42 official stenographic court reporters, all of whom work for the Nebraska Judicial Branch.
That's the capacity you're here today.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, thank you. So guys, that's all I had to add. I don't want to belabor the point just as Funke went on and on. So I think I can pass this along.
Stefanie, do you want to?
Let's
okay. All right. I'm Amy Prenda. I'm the Deputy Administrator for Court Services Division. Dave asked me here today just to, and I don't have a lot of time, but to try to give you an explanation. There are pretty substantial rule changes that are coming that will be in effect on January 1, 2022. And so there's two projects that will affect official court reporters. So we have the Supreme Court Modernization Project, but then we also have the amendments to the court reporting personnel rules. And so we are actually doing education on these and we'll be able to go in much more detail. So during the judges meeting on in October 15th in the afternoon, we'll be doing it for all judicial branch employees. And then we will be repeating that same education for the Nebraska Court Reporters Association on Friday morning. So I don't know time-wise if you want me to go into what the distinguishing factors are between the two, but briefly, there will be some requirements for official court reporters to meet the technology standards as adopted by the Supreme Court, and they haven't adopted them yet, but there will be requirements on particular software and hardware that will need to be used. There is a requirement for electronic filing of BOEs now. Most of the request asking for extensions, payment will now go through this electronic filing process that will happen. So that will be set up and we will explain that in more detail. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has on these two rules. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time. I have about 5-minute presentation, but.
I'm saying that current official court reporters
Mhm.
will be required to purchase a particular software.
Correct. There will be two particular softwares that will be proposed. The state, we will purchase it for them. If we purchase it for them, they won't be able to do freelance work, but we will be purchasing, or they will be using it, yes.
So would that new system software be tied to stenography or audio?
Both. So we have technology standards for stenographers and we have technology standards for digital court reporters. And then we have technology standards for the county court Liberty Recorder System.
I think I read somewhere, I read that you will be like clips and these fellows.
Those are the two that are being proposed. They will be asked to follow the technology standards as adopted by the Supreme Court.
Do you know that's like asking someone to, I know you speak French, but we really like you to speak German. Do you understand that?
Yes, we understand that. We do understand that.
No, you won't get someone to practice. You will. And somebody,
We did a survey of the court reporters.
It's French and German.
We did a survey of the court reporters, and those are the two most commonly used.
Okay.
So we needed, we can revisit and discuss that.
We can come back to this. But you could have all of that space.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm here, judges, sorry, she can't be here. It's late where she is. I want to go over, I'm in ER in Judge Martinez courtroom. And I didn't know that it was called the pilot project when I took the job, but apparently it's a pilot project. I'm 100% listening at all times. I have a headset on. I stop people when I can't hear them. I interrupt. I take care of the exhibits. I had a whole thing typed out when she told me I was going to have to talk because I was not prepared to talk. I don't know what all that is. It could be mumbles. It could be interrupting. I have no clue what is in that box or what time frame it was or anything. So I can't speak on that. Part of what electronic recording does is it picks up everything. So if someone cusses out the judge under their breath, yeah, it might not be audible and they don't want it to be audible. So that might be what one of those inaudibles is, or somebody may have said something in the back of the court and that might be what the inaudible is, or there's a lot of options for what these inaudible things could be. And it could be something that maybe it was part of the record and it should have been picked up. And I thought it was, but maybe it didn't. I consistently take notes while I'm listening. I hear everything twice. I can go back immediately and play a question back if during the long process of objecting and back and forth, they can't remember the question. I will go back and I can replay it immediately for them. But right before Judge left for Belgium, I downloaded 6 cases so that she could listen to them as she was flying. Are we questioning or are we not questioning? Okay. That's all. That's kind of all I can think of, unless there's something that I've forgotten, which I'm sure. Sure.
As a person who's listening, are you also as your transcriptionist too, or is that I just didn't understand.
So the process for, if there's an appeal, the process is obviously the appeal comes in, the clerk's office sends it to me. I download everything onto, there's a drive that the state has. I fill out the form naming all the attorneys and any exhibits and everything. And then I send that to the state. The state has their certified transcriptionists that they use that are in a pool and they use them. And then they also use Liberty so they can see my notes and everything. And also the microphones, there's 4 microphones. I didn't talk about this. There's 4 microphones and they can split. So if, the plaintiff is talking over the defendant, I can cut their microphone off, or the person that's transcribing can cut that microphone off and isolate one mic, or isolate the judge, or isolate the witness, so that it's clear.
So I'd like to clarify, we have 5 transcriptionists in Funke. One of them is a digital official court reporter. That's Linda Roman. The 4 others are stenographic
court reporters. So they listen to the record again and then they type it out and prepare it and certify it. Okay.
And hold on, just apologize. I want to clarify one more thing. What we're doing now is reporting, but also we're moving towards transcribing. So the same person, when they're done with their education piece and meet their certifications, they will be the reporter in the courtroom and they will be transcribing that as well. So we will not be sending those out to a third party, which we understand is more challenging. And that's why the audio is a very important piece of that. But the goal is that they will be reporters and then transcribers when they're done with their training, they've accomplished the certification. So two-part.
And that's what I would like to say, is I believe Jill did not do those, correct?
I'm a CER, I'm not a CT, there's not.
Right, so she is a courtroom clerk, not an ER. ERs are certified to touch their transcripts. So all those sticky notes, she didn't do that. Her work is farmed out to a transcriptionist, who was not present in her courtroom, even though she stopped and done this, done that, given sheets. That's not, she didn't touch that, which I think is the problem.
Thank you. And Jill, I've known Jill for a long time. This is not an attempt to bag on Jill.
No.
She does a really nice job operating the equipment and everything.
It's not
like that.
fun.
These are somebody else's inability to accurately decipher what happened in that court. Somebody who did not bear witness to the proceedings. And I think if that doesn't bother you, it should. That somebody is certifying this who is not.
And they have reached out to me if there's inaudibles, and there's been several times where I've re-listened and said, this is what, but that's what it is.
And that happens when I was on the trial bench.
Sure.
I had a stenographer and she would say, "What did you say here?" And so we'd go back, we'd listen to it. I listened to it 3 or 4 times. She would occasionally put in audible, even for me.
But
So
if the stenographer doesn't hear it, they can say repeat that, or they can say speak up and slow down.
So,
or in the
but-
case of one of my favorite lawyers, take your pen out of your mouth, counsel.
but Jill can do that as well,
Right, that's
because she's gonna be in the court.
Okay, so we're going to transition back to the final open discussion here. Adam, come up, please. Oh, whose chair am I taking? Oh, right. Oh, very good. Right in the middle. I would like to finish this up. In a very constructive manner. All I can tell you is in world history, I remember the Luddites who, rioted when there were sewing machines, right? I know that John Naisbitt wrote a book called Mega Trends, where he said, how do we marriage high tech and high touch? I think that's what we're dealing with here. How do we move forward with accomplishing something is going to end up to be the best practice for the bench, for practitioners, and for court reporters? The goal is to find common ground. And I'd like to have you folks talk a little bit about how you see the future developing here. Where is there common ground? What are things that need to be worked on? Can the unicameral of all places be of help with legislation? So anyway, I'm going to open up the floor to you folks to visit about those things and how do we move forward constructively? Adam, you're up.
Pretrial Services Officer
Thank you, Stu, and thanks to the Omaha Bar Association for putting on this
sent me this
program.
email.
So
I was able
I
to
wanna
get a
cover
hold
just a
of
couple
Josh
of,
Hofer.
I
He
don't think that
confirmed
this
that
got
Cordarius can stay
presented
there.
in a perfectly clear way with the earlier
But
sets of
if
panelists. The
Cordarius
rules as
gets
currently
sentenced-
amended provide for 3
gets
different levels of
sentenced
keeping
to
court records in
probation,
Nebraska. At the top level, you have
then
the
that living
stenographer
arrangement won't
who
work.
has specialized education and training. And what they
So
do is
she's
they take
verified
down
that you can stay
contemporaneous, real-time
with
notes in
Josh.
machine shorthand
Now-
of what happens in front of them. So it's like in 8th grade when you took study skills and they taught you don't just memorize everything the teacher's saying, write it down. Even if you don't refer to those notes later, the fact that you wrote it down is going to help your memory. And that's what the stenographer does. At the mid-level, You have what the rules refer to as the digital reporter, or what we refer to sometimes colloquially as the ER, or the electronic reporter. That person runs a reporting system, but they produce their own transcript. They bear witness to what happens in front of them. They recognize voices because they were there. They remember the people that were there. And then at the bottom tier, you have what happens in county court and what is creeping into district courts, and what the Nebraska Supreme Court has permitted to happen under the latest set of rules that took effect in 2015, is you have the courtroom clerk. That person operates the recording equipment only, and then they outsource the transcription to somebody who did not bear witness to the proceedings, did not see the people, and they have to do their best to decipher what's going on. In terms of the multi-channel, that person, if two people are talking over each other at the same time in different channels, assuming that both microphones don't pick up both voices, that person has to exercise judgment about who goes first in the transcript. And if you can think about a hotly contested cross-examination where the first answer is yes and then the second answer is no, if that person exercises that judgment in a bad or incorrect way, it changes the entire meaning of the outcome. This multi-channel stuff gives us a false sense of security. It is not a solution to having somebody in the courtroom to stop and make sure that you're keeping an orderly record. Now, to Stu's question of where do we need to go? So, first thing, salary, 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 salary. The Nebraska Supreme Court does a lot of really important things with its budget, but its budget request this past cycle was more than $200 million. I don't know if the legislature gave you the full amount that the court requested, but that's what the request was. Court reporter salaries right now make up between $2 and $3 million of that. A massive raise for every court reporter on staff would be a 0.5% increase in the court's budget. And we think that the court needs to be bold and recognize that this is a problem and go to the legislature and say, we are a co-equal branch of government. You have an obligation to fund us. It's the right thing to do. You need to do it. So that's the first thing. Second, and I would be interested in hearing Justice Funke and Justice Freudenberg's thoughts on the following. The court needs to do a better job to go out and reach out and connect with stenographers who might be willing to move and take employment in Nebraska. I was just checking on my phone here during one of the earlier presentations. 5 days ago, the court posted something on Facebook advertising a whole bunch of open positions. Stenographer wasn't one of them. I'd like to know why. On the state jobs board, which syndicates out to ZipRecruiter and other things like that, there are 6 open jobs, records clerk, things like that, through the administrative office of the courts and probation. Not one stenographer is listed as an open position. So as part of the work that I did for my 42 clients, I've got probably between 100 and 200 hours into digging into investigating this. As part of the work that I did, I went and created an account on ZipRecruiter, gave them my name, my email address. I searched for court reporter. That's all I did. I didn't even say I was interested in being hired as a court reporter, but I get emails daily from them, court reporter jobs. And a couple of times per week, I get an email from them that says, hey, the Iowa Division of Administrative Services is hiring a court reporter in Pot County, Iowa, or Mills County, Iowa. And so if you think about somebody who's in Nebraska who just had a bad day at work, and they're thinking, Dina's laughing, was that yesterday, Tuesday? And they just go home and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to go out and see what's out there. And they go create that account, perfectly innocent. All of a sudden, ZipRecruiter is bombarding them with positions from other states. Heck, they might get a position advertisement from Thomas & Thomas, or one of the other very fine court reporting firms in this area. And the problem is we in Nebraska aren't keeping up. People in Des Moines have bad days too. People in Grand Forks, North Dakota have bad days too. And people on the West Coast and the East Coast by the thousands think about moving to the Midwest because it's a better place to raise their family. But if they do a nationwide search for court reporting jobs, we aren't even showing up on their radar because we aren't doing enough to try to connect with them. And this costs a pittance. This isn't that 0.5% of the court's budget. This requires that somebody take ownership of it and say, you know what, it's really, really important that we try everything that we can in order to reach out and connect with people and convince people that they should come and work for the Nebraska judicial branch and they won't regret it. And so that's the biggest thing behind salary is we have got to really really try like we mean it to do a better job.
So I'm gonna throw this question out to everyone here. What common ground can we build a foundation with respect to moving forward in all the areas that we talked about?
Mr. Astley.
Please.
What I think I said when I started my comments, we are doing a pay study, which I envision will show that we should be paying court reporters more. I can't again tell you what that's going to be because it hasn't been completed yet. When that's done, we are going to go to the legislature. We're going to ask for more money. Mr. Astley throws out a large number of $200 million for our budget. Majority of that is probation, who has exploded immensely in the last 5 to 6 years, and that's where most of that money goes is to supervision officers. We've been tasked by the legislature to do juvenile justice and post-release supervision, things of that nature. So that has changed our budget dramatically. But we believe going forward, we should pay court reporters more if that's what the study says. And I think it will. I don't know. As I said, we'll get to Iowa standards, but I see that number going up. And I hope it does. I want to pay court reporters more, but we have to have something definitive to go to the legislature and say, you know, we have a personnel service limit. I think is the PSL that we can only spend so much of our budget for personnel. We have to go to them and ask them if that be raised. We have to ask them to increase our budget to cover these expenses. So I think that going forward, and to be honest with you, when this first came out, Mr. Ashley and I had a conversation on the telephone. And I told him these things. We're going to work through this. I'd like to hear from your group. I'd like to have them talk about it, sit at the table. That didn't happen as well as I had hoped it would. And I'll accept some responsibility for that. But I think, and we're scheduling to meet in the next couple of weeks, and we'll talk about these things again. So pay is a huge issue. It can't be the only issue because we can never pay what some people can pay. There's always going to be somebody who's going to pay more. And so we can't do that. We have to do better on education and training. We have to make court reporters feel like they're part of our system. By that, we have to help educate them on the system. They feel very, and rightfully so, very close to their judge. And the judge feels very close to their court reporter. But I don't think the AOCP feels very close to the court reporter. I don't think the court reporter feels very close to the AOCP. So we need to do better. We need to work on that issue so that it's a team atmosphere. We are all in this together. We work for the same people, the state of Nebraska, citizens. And we don't have an unlimited budget. So we have to decide public service. This is what we chose to do. And we're gonna get paid what is a fair rate, but we can't get paid exactly what we want. So we have to do better to work with court reporters in the future to build that relationship up. And I'm still on for 40 years. And so it needs to be fixed. So we need to do better on that. That's part of why Mr. Astley and I and some of his representative clients are going to meet with Judge Freudenberg, and we're going to try to talk about these issues. I think going forward, we have to do better of advertising. He talks about Mr. Astley talks about the state website, the DAS. We can't advertise on that for court reporters right now because they're not under that system. Once these rules go in, they're able to be advertised under that DAS. So those positions will mention we're reaching out to other schools to try to build those relationships, and we need to do more. As far as I think we have a private recruiting service we've now reached out to. Is that correct, Amy? Okay, so we're going to do that as well. So I think Mr. Astley's raised some valid points. We are going to take them under consideration and try to put them in place. All in all, we're here all pulling for the same issue, and we need to figure out how to do that. So I talk to judges all the time about this. I don't talk to court reporters as much, but I'm available. I sat in on 2 town hall meetings with our court reporters and try to reiterate to them that this was not about an us versus them. This is not about us trying to get rid of them. It's not what we're trying to do. So we look for input. We got 250 comments to the rules, most ever. I read all of those. Judge Freudenberg read all those. Everyone on the court read all of those. We amended the rules based on those comments. We are listening. The one comment was we talked about having audio recordings available for purchase like you do in county court. The committee made up of district judges, court reporters, all thought that was something feasible to do. We got strong comments that that was not appropriate at this point. We agree. We agree that we have some work to do in that respect, and we're not ready to do that. So what did we do? We amended the rules to take that part out. There was concern that the AOCP would be micromanaging the court reporters, and they were serving too many bosses. So we struck the AOCP from that court rule. Now it's just the judge and the Supreme Court, which it's always been. It's always been the judge and the Supreme Court. So that hasn't changed. I can't make you like these rules. I can't make you want to be excited about them, but I can ask you to be part of the process so that we can figure out what to do better. So I think there's room going forward, and I wouldn't be sitting here, Judge Freudenberg wouldn't be sitting here if we didn't think there was some value to this discussion. The rules have been adopted. They're going to be getting put in place in January. If it was a done deal and we were going to go stick our heads in the sand, we wouldn't be having these discussions. So I encourage you in a polite, respectful way to reach out to us. And you have asked that you continue to do that. Sorry if I went over my time limit again. Freudenberg.
Raise the page rate way up, would that just solve the page shortage? Or is that everyone shaking their head?
It's a salary. The other concern about page rates, a little bit is an access to justice issue. If we raise them to an exorbitant amount, I'm not saying anybody wants that, but if we did, that again limits the ordinary person's ability to have an appeal. Right now, counties pay for a big chunk of these because they're criminal and they're indigent defendants, and the counties bear that burden. If we raise it, the counties will pay more of that burden. So we have to be tempered or measured in how we do that. And there's been some suggestions we raise it to $425 or $450. If we could do that, and I didn't think it affected access to justice, it's not coming out of our budget, that'd be fine. But that's not, I don't think at this point realistic. But these are, again, they can be reviewed on an annual basis. So if we do the pay rate or the pay rates that we're talking about now, they've been out for comment, we've gotten comments back, the court's considering those. If we adopt those next year, it's going to be brought back again. That's part of the rules, is to annually review the page rates. So I think those are some of the steps that going forward, we can do, we should do, we will do.
To try to answer your question, going forward, this is the work in progress. The problem that came up that we were trying to address had to be addressed. There was no not doing anything. Something had to be done to address the shortage of court reporters and the lack of the ability to create the records, to preserve the records. We are moving through that. I'm hoping in the future the court reporters will engage us and help us find solutions to the problems that arise. There's one thing to point out a problem, there's another to help find the solution. Now, that's what I'm hoping, is that we work together to find solutions as we go forward and not just continually be at loggerheads. There was no option of not doing anything in the situation. We had to take steps, and those were taken to protect the record, to continue moving forward, not only in Omaha, not only in Sarpy County, but across the entirety of the state. So that's going forward. To answer your question, I'm hoping the common ground is we have an open dialogue that as the questions come forward, they're not, just pointing out problems and trying to nitpick at what's already been done, to help us find solutions from where we are going forward. So that's where I would say.
So we need to wrap it up here. So just a couple of more questions for the good of the order.
First of all, thank you for being here. We appreciate that you've taken the time to do this. We've been needing meetings like this in a long time. You keep referring to open dialogue. I guess I'm here to request some transparency in these committees. We don't feel on this latest court reporters committee, I think I'm speaking for the majority of my fellow court reporters, we don't feel like we were accurately represented in that committee. Both reporters on that committee were from a rural area, not from a major metro area. And when I called to ask to be on that committee, when I found out about it, I was told no. If we want to have transparency and open dialogue, then we need to have open committees where people can bring their concerns or have an appointed, chosen representative by the court reporters themselves.
That's a valid point. We had that discussion today about patrons. And what we said was, we think we need somebody from Douglas, Sarpy, or Lancaster. I think I said it, maybe said that earlier. We want them to have their voice heard. So Douglas, Lancaster, Sarpy are 3 metro courts. So yes, we want them to be heard. And that's part of, I think, why we need to have somebody on the page rate discussion. And so that committee is going to have somebody. I don't know, I'm not the one picking it, but if you throw me suggestions, I will go to bat for who that person should be.
Well, Stefanie, you reached out to the Nebraska Court Reporters Association and asked them to choose 2 representatives to be on that committee. And that's how the 2 representatives were chosen. So we had nothing to do. We asked the association to provide us 2 names. So that was how those positions were picked.
So we're clear, the majority of the people on the Nebraska Court Reporters Association are freelance reporters. And the officials have tried through the Nebraska Court Reporters Association to get the association to stand up for officials, and they've been met with significant pushback. And so I think that part of the problem, and I'm glad you brought this up, because I mean, I think this is a really good first step in terms of us being able to move forward and try to heal some of these wounds. Part of the problem is that, the majority of my clients felt as though they never had a voice in this in the first place, that the committees met in secret, and I'm not going, well, hang on.
I know, I've been in a lot, because that's not true. We did not meet in secret. We had meetings over the last year and a half. So those misconceptions or misstatements, that's not appropriate. We are trying to work on this as a group. And I'm here to say that. I'm here to stake my reputation on it.
Let me get to the good
And
part, if I may. If I may, but I'm happy we're having this.
Everybody take a deep breath. We're gonna finish up here with another question.
Yeah, and thank you, Stu. I want to be clear. That's the perception, and I understand that that's not exactly reality. But I am happy that we're having these conversations, and I did want to say to the audience here and to the folks that are watching on Zoom, I do appreciate the access that I've had to Justice Funke. He's been very candid and open with me and visiting with me. He's allowed me to vent a little bit to him, and we've had some very constructive dialogues that I think are going to continue in the future. We do have a meeting that we're about ready to schedule in the next couple of weeks or so, and I look forward to that, and I think that that's going to be a very productive meeting. And so when we talk about kind of the way that this got started, and it wasn't started in the way that was going to make my clients happy, I think we can get past that, and I think we can move forward, and I think we can heal. But I do agree that it's going to require a lot of dialogue, and it's going to require some more official channels of communication with the court. My clients would have really liked to have heard about the decision to make a salary study firsthand instead of thirdhand from a district court judge that told us. That's a piece of great news. And if we can have an open chain of communication, then we can spread that news faster, and we can move forward faster. And everybody is on the same team here. And I've even told the state court administrator that I appreciated his courtesy and professionalism in dealing with some requests that we made of him that probably weren't the most fun requests to answer. But this is important work, and we all have an important role in it. And I think that if we can continue to have a positive and constructive dialogue, I think that's going to be helpful. But at the same time, when there's problems, those problems need to be pointed out, and we need to be honest about what those problems are, or we're not going to have a constructive dialogue. So so I'm feeling pretty good about where we're going.
And I'm just recommending.
We've got two more questions, and then we're gonna have cookies. And everybody will be able to talk over cookies.
And I can tell you, I would recommend that anything going forward, whether it's a formal committee meeting or it's a discussion, that it absolutely has to involve a stenographer from, I know there's only one left in Lincoln, I think, but it has to be a stenographer from Douglas County or Sarpy County, not an ER. It has to be a stenographer. Because I can tell you, my stenographer who left to go to Iowa actually reached out and sent an email, and I can show it to you, Justice Funke, where she basically said, there's not someone from Lincoln's, Sarpy or Douglas on this committee. And I really think it's necessary because she worked in all different areas, small town to Douglas. And she said in this email, I have never seen more work than I've seen since I've come back to Douglas County, and the stress and everything that's on the stenos in Douglas. So I'm just making the suggestion that moving forward, any discussions, any committee meetings have to involve a steno from Sarpy or Douglas.
We're gonna have the granddaddy of all. You don't want the floor? Your question was answered?
He asked me.
Okay, there we go. All right. Well, thank you so much for everybody attending, participating, making this I think, a very constructive time. Hopefully, this will enhance the move forward with respect to how do we incorporate, things as technology changes, but maintaining the high touch, right? I mean, that's what we want to do. So anyway, cookies.
Thank you.
Well,